what's shaking? I'm Patrick Jagir, the Cosmic Alchemist, and welcome to this video. So in this video, I want to talk about a news story. Came out about 3-4 weeks ago. Wasn't a big headline, but it's something that is important to me, and it's important to millions of people around the world. So what this story was all about was that members of the government in Sweden were talking about potentially banning the ancient Germanic and Scandinavian rune script. So the runes are a symbolic language, they're an alphabet from ancient Germanic times, and they're also talking about banning some sacred symbols from the ancient days, from the ancient Germanic pagan culture, from the Viking culture. And the reason that they gave for this was they're saying that they were symbols associated with hate groups. But, you know, when you do the homework, they have nothing to do with hate or racism or any of that stuff. What had happened here was that some crazy ass, white supremacist groups had appropriated some of these symbols and used them completely out of context. So I'm going to talk about these 3 symbols that are in question. And the whole point is that when you do your homework and you really do the research, these symbols have nothing to do with exclusionism or xenophobia or racism or anything like that. They're actually symbols of unity, and they're symbols of higher consciousness and the good of all. So these 3 symbols are the rune Tiwaz, and then a symbol called Vegvisir, and then the symbol for Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor. So let's get into Tiwaz. So Tiwaz is the name of a god. The more common name is Tyr. That's a Scandinavian version of his name, T-I-R. And then there's Tiw. So Tiw is T-I-W, and this is actually where we get Tuesday from, because the days of the week are all Germanic gods. Go into that another time. But so Tuesday is Tuesday. So his name, the names have some variations. So you get Tyr, Tiw, and Tiwaz. So this symbol looks like an arrow pointing up. And this is a symbol of highest spiritual awareness. And so Tyr, or Tiw, or Tiwaz, he is a sky god. And on the one hand, he's kind of an avatar of Mars. So Mars is kind of his planetary equivalent. But then it was also said that he resided in the North Star, and the North Star is the pole star. So it's the only star in the heavens that appears to not move around the sky, to not rotate somehow. It's right above the North Pole, so it appears to stand still, and it's actually part of what in the Hermetic tradition was called the axis mundi, so the world axis. So Tyr was a sky god, and this sky god, this sky father, was all about protecting humanity. And really what he did was he was sort of seen as an older mature warrior. And so rather than being quick to just go off and fight people and to do violence, his message was actually, before you pick up a weapon and do violence, you really want to step back and think about the consequences, because really nobody wins from warfare or violence. Everyone gets hurt. So there's a really cool myth about this god, about Tiwaz, or Tyr, or Tiw. So in the myths, the gods of Asgard have this giant wolf that lives with them. His name is, they call him Fenrir. They call him the Fenris wolf. And he gets unbelievably huge to the point where the gods are afraid of him. And he has a massive appetite, and he's extremely strong, and he's ferocious. He's good-natured towards the gods, but he has a capacity for ferocity. So the gods decide they want to bind him. They want to tie him up to neutralize him. So they keep having these chains made, and the wolf breaks the chains easily. And he's getting a reputation for being strong because he can, break the finest chains that the gods can have made. So finally the gods get smart, and they have these little silken cords made that are really stronger than any chains they can make. So they say, hey, Fenrir, we have a new binding for you to break. And he sees the cords and he goes, those don't look too strong. I think if I break those, I won't be renowned for my strength. It'll be kind of humiliating. So they're kind of playing his ego and trying to shame him into do it. So, finally he says, well, I sense some deceit in this because, this whole thing's fishy. So he says, I'll do this if I have an insurance policy. And the insurance policy I want is that one of you gods are going to have to put your hand in my mouth. So it was like not just the hand, but like the wrist and the whole forearm. So the gods just kind of stand around looking at each other and they're like, nah, I'm not going to do that. So finally Tiwaz, he steps up and he says, yeah, I'll do it. Puts his right arm, his right hand, wrist, and forearm into the giant wolf's mouth. And they put the silken cords around the wolf's legs, and when the wolf can't break the bonds, he bites off, the lower half of Tyr's right arm. So basically Tyr loses his ability to wage warfare. So he loses his sword hand. So it's kind of like Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones. It's the same kind of thing. So for the good of all, Tyr gives up his sword hand. So to prevent violence, to maintain the peace, he gives up his ability to wage war and do violence. So another thing too is that when you look in the lore, in the myths, in the traditional writings, none of these say anything about this god, Tyr or Tiu or Tiwaz, only protecting and helping, the white people or the Germanic people or people from this tribe or this country. It's just all about humans. It says that he's there for all humanity. So this symbol, this Tiwaz rune, has nothing to do with exclusionism or xenophobia or racism or anything like that. It's not a fact. When you go to the primary source material, like intellectuals are always telling you to do, go to the primary source material, do the homework. There's no racial or ethnic references as to who Tyr helps and serves and protects. So then moving on to Vegvisir. This is a symbol from the old days, especially from the Viking days when they were out sailing a lot. And Vegvisir, its name means seeing the way. So they believed that this symbol had the power to help you to not get lost and die of exposure. So it was like a preventative kind of a magical symbol, if you will. And this symbol has absolutely no associations with any race or ethnicity or any country or any tribe. It's just about people not getting lost. So it's not just about physical journeys, but it's about life too. It's, we struggle with what direction to go in life and what decisions to make, and we feel lost at times. So it's a symbol that helps you, it brings sort of, these sacred symbols bring your own abilities out of your subconscious mind to help yourself. I think that the gods are real energies and forces, but the gods and the power of these symbols are inside of us, and these symbols help bring them out of us when we look at them repeatedly and we meditate on them. So Vegvisir means seeing the way. So it's just about, it can be about physical journeys, or it can just be about, your journey through life and all the situations you encounter and the decisions you have to make, and, opportunities you seize, opportunities you turn down. So nowhere in any of the writings does it have any association with race, ethnicity, tribe, or country. So again, this is just another symbol that these crazy ass white supremacists are just trying to use because they want to recruit people. So they want to use these old symbols to their own ends, and they want to use them inappropriately and out of context. So this is what this is really about. And the next symbol is Mjolnir. So Mjolnir is the hammer of Thor. So you've seen the Marvel movies very likely, where Thor's throwing the hammer like a boomerang that comes back to him. He uses it to fly, and he, smites his enemies with it. And in the lore, Thor was always fighting the giants, smiting the giants. So Mjolnir, first off, is a representation of our ability as human beings to conduct and project and absorb and to just handle in general life force energy, otherwise known as chi or prana. Because Thor is, traditionally, he's a god of thunder and lightning is symbolic of electromagnetic energy, and our bodies are run by electromagnetic energy. And the more of it you have, the better off you feel. So that's what this hammer is all about. It's our ability to handle energy, basically. So Thor is a god of thunder and lightning, which is really electromagnetic energy and life force energy. One thing that electromagnetism does is it maintains physical boundaries. So it keeps molecules and atoms separate, so objects can be separate, so people can be separate from the environment. So, that's why my butt doesn't fall through this chair and through the floors, because there's this electromagnetic barrier separating things. So electromagnetism and Thor allow for separateness of objects, but then they allow for boundaries, so psychic boundaries. So it allows people to have distinct identities where they're separate and they can be themselves. And so Thor is the force and the god that's responsible for this. And that's why Thor was respected as the protector of Asgard, the home of the gods, because Asgard is the home of the sky gods, the celestial gods. And the gods really are the highest aspects of our minds, of our psyches. Because again, the gods live inside of us. So Thor protects our higher consciousness. And actually his older name was Thunar, because Thor is a Scandinavian version or a Scandinavian derivative of Thunar. So Thunar, good translation for that is Lord of the divine mind, or Lord of the higher mind. So he's the sort of the patron god of the higher consciousness. So the higher consciousness is the spiritual, objective mindset. It's a holistic mindset. And so this higher mind is opposed to the lower mind, which is, it's the reptilian brain. It's our fight or flight, it's our fear, it's our aggression, it's our greed, it's our physical appetites. And the thing about the lower mind, the reptilian brain, is it's completely subjective. It considers itself to be the center of the universe and the most important thing in the universe, and it always has to get what it believes that it needs and that it wants. So Thor is is a complete diametrically opposed counterpoint, because since he rules over the higher consciousness, he's saying, hey, step back, be objective, and see the big picture. Don't be so wrapped up in yourself. And that's a big thing too with energy practices. When you do qigong, you do yoga, you meditate, you're gathering energy into your body and into your aura. So really, this life force energy that Thor represents is the bridge to higher consciousness. And when you have higher consciousness, you can cooperate with people and you're not reactive over everything that happens in your environment. You're easier on yourself, you cooperate with other people, and you're not in like a fight or flight reactive sort of a mode. You can just chill. You can just chill and get along with people. So that's what Thor's all about, because Thor was also a blesser of unions. He presided over marriage and sanctified, marriages. And just bonds between people in general. Harmonious bonds between people in general. So Thor is a god of cooperation and, like I said, higher consciousness. Thor is also known as the protector of humanity and the protector of the earth. Thor is an avatar of Jupiter, so he also symbolizes Jupiter. And Jupiter is like a giant magnet in the solar system. So whatever asteroids that the sun doesn't suck in and neutralize, Jupiter picks up the rest. So Jupiter, on a daily basis, actually protects the earth from asteroids and massive objects that could strike the earth. So Thor is a protector of the earth, and he's also called the son of the earth. So this would actually be a good symbol for a country like Sweden, or really any country or government or movement that cares about environmentalism. in green technology and green lifestyles. So this would actually be a good symbol. All of these symbols would actually be good symbols, because one thing, the government of Sweden talks a big game about promoting religious freedom and inclusion and diversity. And it's like, if they ban these symbols, then practicing pagans in Sweden won't be able to display symbols that are important to them, but other religions will, and it's like, I think Sweden's kind of bending over backwards to make the Islamic newcomers feel comfortable, and they want to do it at the expense of everyone else. I think when you look at left and right politics, the right is like the tough guys, and the left is kind of like the pushover, sort of like intellectuals, and they can kind of bend over backwards too much. They can kind of be doormats when they feel like they have a compelling interest to do so, whereas the right is more like, they're the muscle. So people just have to be less extreme, because at this point, like, political extremism is totally mainstream. So getting back to my point, really, these symbols, these sacred symbols, are all symbols of unity. And but they don't teach this stuff in universities. So really, it's my message to the government of Sweden is that if you want more racism and more xenophobia and more nationalism and exclusionism, then you should definitely ban these symbols. If you want more unity and more diversity and more cooperation, more tolerance, then let people display these symbols. You might even spend some money on teaching people about these symbols, but you're going to have to kind of turn down the control freak behavior, and do something different, that's outside of what you learned in college. So that's definitely my message to them. And another part of this is that these symbols were banned by the Christian church. So when you go back in history, the Roman Empire went out, and it was all during the age of Pisces, was assimilating people all over Europe. So they'd conquer them, and in the process of conquest, they'd destroy the way they were living. So it's like the Native Americans in the United States, or like the Aborigines. It's like, once you take their land away, they can't live off the land the way they used to. So they're cut off, and they end up losing their cultures. Then when the Roman Empire died, the Catholic Church basically inherited its legacy. And then, all Christianity really is about 95% Catholic, no matter how much better they think they are than Catholics and how backward they say the Catholics are. So where the Roman Empire left off, Christianity kept spreading through Europe and conquering people, and they got, kind of crooked kings to use their militaries to go Christianize people for them. And people all over Europe at one point or another, from 2,000 years ago to about through the Middle Ages, they got the ultimatum, like, you're either going to become a Christian or you're going to die. So these symbols were banned, people forgot what they were, and they still survived underground. People continued the teachings and the traditions, but it was very limited. So what you had here was you had a pattern of repression. And when you look at psychology, repression of an emotion or an idea or of behavior can really be disastrous. It can bring about like psychotic behavior and serial killer behavior. When you psychologically repress something, tension builds up in the person's mind, and eventually they can just snap and explode. So one of the fathers of modern psychology, Carl Jung, was from Switzerland, so it's a Germanic country in part. And he knew about all these traditions, and he even said that the rise of the Third Reich and the Nazis and the events of World War II was a result of this old pre-Christian Germanic culture being suppressed, being repressed. And basically, when you repress something, you sort of create a split within someone's mind. So they're in conflict. The two halves of a person are in conflict with each other, and it can boil over and explode. So that's what he said happened in Germany, is basically you had the Romans come in, then you had the church come in, outlawing their culture and their spirituality. Because what you had in all over Europe in the ancient times was basically Hinduism, because the European cultures and languages are Indo-European, so they have a common root with the culture in India. So that's what was around in Europe, and the church destroyed it and, forced it underground. So Carl Jung even said that, in Germany, this really messed people up in the long term. And by the end of the 1900s, people were starting to remember, and they were starting to remember these old teachings and the old gods and the old sacred symbols and the old spirituality. But then the Third Reich came in and they repressed it again, and Hitler, even when he started the Hitler Youth, a lot of German parents were worried that he was going to teach them about Odin, or Wotan as they call him in Germany, and he was going to make the kids part of the cult of Odin. And Hitler responded and he said, no, I'm not going to bring your kids into the cult of Odin, because Christianity is superior, and Christianity wouldn't have overtaken our native spirituality if it hadn't been superior. So Hitler even said Germanic pagan spiritualism was inferior, so that's why it went out. So the Nazis repressed this stuff, so I think it made it even worse. It heated up this repression, turned it into a pressure cooker, and then it exploded. So basically, all those events were a reaction of what the age of Pisces did to the German people. Is it drove their true identity underground, and it grafted, this Judeo-Christianity onto them, and it taught these people that the Old Testament was their history, and it's no, not even remotely. So really, I think to make the world healthy and to end racism, I think all races should rediscover their native spiritualities, because what we have now is, we're living in this continuation of the Roman Empire, and so it's a one-size-fits-all lifestyle, and a one-size-fits-all worldview, and a one-size-fits-all system. And so we're all being forced into this one-size-fits-all life, and it makes people go crazy. So I think the best thing every race can do is discover your native tradition. And, as far as, this Germanic, Viking era spirituality goes, anyone can follow it. Usually people, they resonate more and they have more affinity to their native ethnic spirituality, but people from all over the world celebrate different spiritualities. A lot of people from every race practice yoga, and they do, Vedic and Hindu meditations and Buddhist meditations, and people from all over practice Taoism, and then people from all over the world worship the Viking era gods and the Germanic gods like Odin and Thor and Freya, and and so on and so forth. There are people in East Asia and Africa and South America that celebrate these gods and these runes, these sacred symbols. So it's colorblind. These symbols that I showed you in the tradition that they come out of, totally colorblind. Anyone can celebrate them and make use of them. And the runes help you to look deeper into the patterns in your life and see more meaning in your life, and help you get your life onto a more positive course. So all this stuff is about being positive, and it's totally colorblind. Anyone can make use out of it. The only prerequisite to celebrating these traditions and these gods and these symbols is just being human. That's all you need. No matter what anyone tells you. There are groups out there that say, yeah, it's for people of European descent only and white people only, but they're taking this entire tradition out of context. So that's my 2 cents. So if you want to learn more about the runes, you can schedule a rune reading with me. I'll teach you all about them, and I'll show you how they relate to your life. It's kind of like reading tarot cards. It's in the neighborhood. And I also do Vedic astrology readings. So Vedic astrology is something that, if you're of European descent, your ancestors knew about this kind of astrology. So it's a way to learn more about, your ancient native culture. And I also have Qigong videos available for download. So my site is thecosmicalchemist.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you later.